Imagine a place where interdimensional wormholes routinely open in the sky and silent black UFOs cross over a threshold into our reality. A place where malevolent Native American witches take the form of grotesque human-animal hybrids and terrorize unsuspecting victims with inhuman strength, speed, and cunning. A place where intelligently controlled glass orbs filled with a crackling blue liquid harass livestock and instantaneously incinerate family dogs. Imagine a place where bulletproof wolves stalk the property and mysterious otherworldly visitors monitor your every move from a scientific observation booth. Now imagine that you know none of this and that you just purchased that piece of land. Welcome to Skinwalker Ranch.
Hello, and welcome to Unknowable, the podcast where we talk about all things mysterious, unusual, or unknowable. I'm Justine.
And I'm Gray. Some weeks we break down one larger mystery between the two of us. Other weeks we pick two smaller mysteries on a theme and teach each other about them based on our own independent research. If you want to support the show, find us on social media at Unknowablepodcast and look for us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review.
And find us on Patreon.
Please become a patron on Patreon.
Get a Mothman print.
Yes.
They're still available.
Still available. Still awesome.
Still awesome. Gray makes them himself.
Handmade.
At his apartment.
Hand-pulled prints.
Yep. In Portland. It's awesome.
It's pretty sweet.
People who've gotten them so far really like them.
Limited edition. We're only going to do 25.
Yeah. And then they're gone forever.
Forever.
And then there's going to be other prints maybe.
Yeah. Could be worth money someday.
Could be worth money.
But that's not the important part.
It's not the important part. The important part is this right here. Unknowable. So, this is part 1 of 3.
Yes.
Talking about the biggest topic we have dived into. Dove in.
This is definitely the most intense topic that we have dove into.
It's intense. It's really intense.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Like, it should be noted that like 3 episodes, even in 3 episodes, we're probably still not going to get to everything that's going to happen.
No.
Like, Skinwalker Ranch has cryptids, UFOs, like paranormal stuff, cattle
orbs,
mutilation, orbs,
crop circles,
Bigfoot,
poltergeist activity,
water snakes.
Like,
it's insane how much is going on here.
Yeah.
So
it's basically everything.
Yeah, it's like the most active, like, paranormal hotspot that I've ever heard of.
Yeah. We've got, like, Native American curses.
Yep.
We've got Freemason grave desecration.
Right.
We've got...
Always fun.
Just an insane amount of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It literally everything you could think of that's, like, weird is in this area.
Right.
Super cool.
Whatever part of the paranormal you're into, keep listening because we're going to get to it eventually.
Yeah, it's going to come up somewhere, even if it's just once. There's going to be something. My mind, like, whenever I think about this topic, is just, like, racing because there's so much shit.
So much.
So,
it's fascinating.
This is Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes.
Also known as Sherman Ranch.
Yep.
Which is the last name of the family who probably had the most bizarre encounters on the ranch.
At least the most well-publicized.
Yeah.
They were the ones who kind of, like, brought this into the national consciousness.
Exactly. Also known as the UFO Ranch.
Yep.
480 acres in Utah.
Yep.
In Uintah County.
I think so.
Yeah.
Uintah.
Uintah?
Yeah. Okay.
Bordered on 3 sides by the Ute Indian Reservation. So, like we said, this is the site of paranormal, UFO, Bigfoot, crazy wolves, and skinwalkers, and everything. Orbs. So yeah, that's the basic summary. That doesn't really sound like much, but it's a lot. It's
a lot because when we get into the nature of each of these different things, it's pretty wild. Like, just describing something as an orb is just like, oh, okay. Like, you took a photo and there was an orb in it, but this isn't.
No, these are not those orbs.
No, these are not those orbs.
These are not just seen in photos. These are, like, real life orbs in all kinds of different areas doing some really scary shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
One story in mind comes particular. But yeah, you're gonna hear about that.
I feel bad for a lot of animals in this episode.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk first about the sort of the history of this area, because there's a long and checkered past with just this basin, but as well as the ranch itself.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the Uinta Basin.
Yep.
That's spelled Uinte. Discovered by an expedition sent by Mormon leader Brigham Young.
Classic. Yep.
Yeah, which
so this is
don't know why I didn't think about that.
Mormon territory.
Yes, this is very much a Mormon territory. I think one of the things that I heard was like something like 90% of the population in this area are Mormon
or Native American.
Yeah, with the other 10% being part of like the Ute tribe.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is less than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just typical. This area, of course, was solely Native Americans at some point in its history, and inhabited for more than 12,000 years by Native American tribes.
Yes.
And then white people came in and fucked it all up.
Classic. And even the Native Americans, the Utes, they weren't originally from this area. They were relocated from their more like fertile land that they were living on.
Yeah.
And the American government relocated them several times to this ranch.
Exactly.
So it's like this isn't even like their ancestral homeland. Which, like, I part of me just thinks that like a lot of what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch is just kind of like cosmic karma, just like catching up with white people in general.
Big time.
Because as we'll see throughout the story, the Native Americans seem to have the sense to stay away from this ranch, and white people are like, what can go wrong? What's
Typical.
happening?
Yeah, white people are always just like, I'll go in there.
Right.
I'll do that.
In the ghost story, they're the one who goes back into the house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so when the expedition sent by Brigham Young came and checked out this area, they basically reported back that it was a wasteland. Yep. Which it is said that the area is a little bit more difficult, but definitely not a wasteland. No. That they were just like, fuck this place. And then the first white men to visit the region, so that was like with Spanish expeditions led by Fathers Dominguez and Escalante in the 1770s. And like 100 or so years later, essentially like white people had said fuck you and taken over the region in the interest of mining.
Classic.
Because they realized that there were some interesting things they could get from the region.
There's
and
gold in them there hills.
Yeah, they wanted to get that shit. Yeah. So at some point they set up Fort Duchesne.
Yep. Military fort
that was basically done to kind of protect the native population, from what I understood. There had been kind of a lot of like tumultuous back and forth between, oh yeah, we're going to protect this land for you, and then like, oh, just kidding, it's actually going to be this land, and we're going to move you, and it was a lot of whatever, and the Utes were described as being like hostile and being aggressive, which like...
Can't imagine why.
Yeah. I feel like, didn't we went into this a little bit with the Roanoke episode too, where it was like, of course the Native Americans were described that way by the white people who came in and took over.
And like gave them diseases and stole their land and then broke treaties and
Yeah. So of course they were maybe a little aggressive.
Right.
Because you just came in and took over. So yeah. Do you have any more on the basin?
Not the basin itself, just kind of that the basin is now known as like a UFO hotspot. And throughout history, even there's been sightings of strange lights in the sky by everybody from the soldiers at Fort Duchesne all the way up through modern day.
Yep.
The Fort Duchesne is interesting because it was a base for the Buffalo Soldiers, which was an all-black cavalry unit.
Yeah.
Which is cool. They were all also apparently Freemasons.
Yeah. So, which is, according to the modern day thought of Freemasons, seems unusual.
Right.
Like, I think when a lot of people think of Freemasons, they think of like George W. Bush in the Skull and Bones.
Like rich and
where it's,
powerful people.
Yeah. It's all white men that are powerful and rich.
Right. But. So it's a little strange that these black cavalrymen, which, the fact that there was like black people in the military back then was already a big deal.
Right.
Let alone Freemasons. So they were all at Fort Duchesne and doing whatever it is that the Freemasons do. Supposedly they're part of the Illuminati or the Trilateralists. Well, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, that's a whole episode.
Freemasons is just a very deep topic as well.
It's mysterious. They've got like their own secret handshakes. They've got, the whole thing is shrouded by a lot of secrecy.
Yes.
They've got their own like sign language. They've got, and there's just a lot of like I guess a lot of rumors, essentially, because I don't think that many people really know for sure,
Right.
besides the Freemasons. But there's a lot of rumor of these Freemasons being tied to a lot of spiritual and kind of mystical properties.
Absolutely.
Like in this time period and even earlier, there's kind of mention of the Freemason groups being, there's a lot of like alchemists and things like that were taking part in this. So it has always been seen as kind of a unusual, mysterious group.
Yeah, like they're fucking with some dark magic, basically.
Yeah, there's some shit
Whether or
going
not
on.
they're actually doing it, that's another question.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that along Skinwalker Ridge, which is like runs through the Skinwalker Ranch land, there's this one sheer rock cliff, and maybe like 10, 15, 20 feet down from the lip of the ridge, there's a carving on the wall. So it looks like somebody had to rappel down this wall on a rope to carve this, and it's a Masonic cross. So that's just a little interesting little side note in the Skinwalker Ranch history, that Masons settled here, and because the Masons are so well connected to a ton of other conspiracy theories, this ranch is connected in some way to all of that. So when we start to get into like what may be happening at the ranch, the Masons will factor in little bits here and there.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of a little interesting history of the ranch.
I won't go into one of the theories of that because that'll come later.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
But we will get there. Yeah, so essentially that was what was going on at the time. Basically they started having kind of like these saloons and like brothels. So at some point Congress had made a decision to make the land public domain. So, of course.
Just kidding. You don't live here anymore, Native Americans.
Yeah, sorry.
Your land is now public.
Sorry. Which they didn't really fully realize meant that no law enforcement had any jurisdiction there. So up pops all of these saloons and brothels, and there were all kinds of, like, technically I think the soldiers of Fort Duchesne weren't supposed to take part in all of that, but of course they did. And they would kind of wander home drunk and toss in a bunch of their bottles into this ravine, which eventually became known as Bottle Hollow.
Bottle Hollow.
So this is another significant area.
Yep.
This is an area, too, that directly abuts Skinwalker Ranch. So this is relevant because it's like, it's not part of Skinwalker Ranch, but it is right up against
adjacent.
The edge. Yeah. So the Utes have long believed that Bottle Hollow is inhabited by one or more large aquatic snakes.
Right. So what's interesting is Bottle Hollow didn't used to have water in it.
Yeah.
It was just an empty ravine where the soldiers would toss their bottles, but they ended up damming it or damming a river and creating a reservoir there as like a water source.
Yep.
So it's a very recent thing that there's water here. So like somewhere like Loch Ness, where there's supposedly this aquatic cryptid that lives there.
Yeah.
It's existed since the glaciers carved it out. So it's a very old lake or whatever, loch, and it is conceivable that some ancient animal still lives there. But if there's anything like aquatic snakes in Bottle Hollow, then it's a very recent transplant because it was in the 1800s that it was dammed up.
Exactly.
And created.
Yeah, and that, eyewitness reports basically date back to the point when it was filled with water. So this, obviously there were not aquatic snakes living in this dry ravine previously, but all of a sudden, there they are.
Yeah, it's wild.
There have been, so tribal police officers say there have been like an inordinate number of drownings in Bottle Hollow.
Yep.
And at least a few of them are, at the very least, unofficially attributed to this snake or these snakes or whatever they are.
Yeah.
There was one case with a Ute woman swimming with a male companion. Witnesses said that she started screaming that something had grabbed her and was pulling her under.
Jesus.
Her companion told the officers that he went underwater to try to save her and grappled with a huge snake.
Yep.
And by the time he freed her and got her to the surface, she was already dead.
Jesus.
So,
yeah. There's
what the hell?
Tons of reports of like in the moonlight being able to see like undulating giant snakes underneath the water, like swimming down and back in the ravine.
Which almost sounds beautiful.
Right.
Except
It's
terrifying.
horrifying.
What the hell?
And what's interesting about this is, like, this is fully a footnote. Like, this isn't, we haven't even really gotten to Skinwalker Ranch yet. This is just like, oh, like, there's this weird ravine that was recently filled that has, like, aquatic snakes in it.
Yeah, by the way.
Yeah.
Right next to Skinwalker Ranch.
Right next to it.
Just giving you some context of how bizarre this whole area is.
Right.
Yeah. There's also accounts of strange lights entering and leaving the waters.
Yep.
Which is, I don't think I've ever heard of lights doing that particular thing. Right.
Which, like, this goes back to the orbs.
Yeah.
Like, so I know that there's types of UFOs that interact with the water. There's even, like, there's USOs instead of unidentified flying objects. There's unidentified submerged objects.
Whoa.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole episode.
Right? A realm of UFOs. People have seen, like, UFOs hovering over water and, like, sucking water up into the UFO.
Holy crap.
So maybe they need water for whatever. That's why they come to Earth.
Damn.
We have a ton of liquid water.
Yeah, we do.
So the orb coming out of Bottle Hollow is interesting because maybe it kind of connects to a larger mythology of UFOs needing water for whatever reason.
Right. Maybe it's dipping in there to, like, get some water.
Right.
And then it's like, see you later.
Like regenerating. Or it lives under the water. Or like docks under the water.
Yeah, who knows? Freaking
Very
weird.
bizarre.
Yeah. In 1998, a police officer told the two journalists that we'll talk about later that he saw a large light plunge into the middle of the reservoir and then quickly exit before flying away into the night sky. And he said he couldn't even recall if he heard any splashing noises, which is odd.
That is weird.
Which, again, goes along with the entire idea of UFOs in general, that a lot of what people report is not hearing any noise from UFOs.
That's a ton of that here.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. And then a few years later, they interviewed these 4 young men who had kind of been at the beach, like, with some dates, and they saw a blue-white ball of light fly out of the darkness from the direction of the ranch.
Right.
And it dove into the water just a few feet from the shore and then emerged a few seconds later. And while it had been in the water, it changed its shape. It had started off as round and then it emerged. I think they described it as a maneuverable belt-shaped shaft of light. And then it did a, quote, brief, writhing aerial dance and then zipped away. Kind of like hugged the ground and then disappeared over the top of Skinwalker Ridge. Weird. What the hell?
Right. Like, what even is going on there?
Yeah. They interviewed all 4 of these guys separately. They determined, like, they really believed that these guys were telling the truth. Yeah. They wanted to stay anonymous. So this was not, like, a reach
publicity.
For... Yeah. This was just very much like, hey, this weird fucking thing happened.
It's wild.
What the hell? And what is this aerial dance?
Right.
Which kind of goes along. There's a lot of mentions, I think, in... We'll talk a little bit more about this book, but the book that we are both reading on this topic does mention a few times that, like, the sightings, that various, like, creatures and crafts and things, like, do seem like they are not even necessarily, like, playing with people, maybe a little bit of that, but, like, trying to kind of tease people a little bit.
Right. The term, I think it's trickster. Like, there's, like, a trickster element to all of it. Like, it's just kind of fucking around. Yeah. Like, it has the power to do awful things, as we will hear, but it chooses instead to just do these, like, weird poltergeist-like activity and just things that aren't dangerous, but more just, like, annoying and strange and making you question your own sanity. It
seems like it's showing off sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, that particular thing is, like, it comes out of the water and, like, does this little dance and then flies away. Like, what the hell was that?
Right.
So...
Look at me.
Look at me. Yeah, so essentially... That is more or less the earlier part of the timeline. So that was, again, in the late 1800s, we were talking about Fort Duchesne.
Yep.
So in 1905, the first people to settle on what is now called Skinwalker Ranch was a family called the Myers. They just built a small homestead on the property, which is now, I think it's still there, it's just dilapidated.
Yep.
On the northwest corner of the ranch at the foot of Skinwalker Ridge. So they had one strange occurrence. They had a strange visitor to the property. I couldn't really find any more details about what the hell that means.
Right.
But they would later abandon that original homestead. They stayed on the property and they made a new home on the eastern side of the ranch. So I'm not really sure why they abandoned that property. Right. Maybe there were, occurrences they didn't talk about. Maybe they just needed a bigger space. It wasn't working out for them. I don't know. So another interesting thing about the timeline of this whole area is, so that was 1905, 1906 to 1911, and maybe even a little beyond, people in the area start hearing these underground rumblings and explosions.
Yes.
What the hell?
Right.
One of the articles described it as, quote, like distant thunder, which
Interesting.
freaks me out to think about.
From coming from under the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Heard both day and night, and this is, again, like within a close range of the ranch property. It was theorized that it was, quote, the slipping of one layer of rocks over another at some place along the Uinta Fault, which is like over 100 miles north and south along the base of these mountains nearby. But, like, okay, sure,
Yeah.
I guess.
That's a decent scientific explanation, but
Yeah.
well, when we get into the theories, we'll explain what could be going on with the underground noises.
Yeah. This just adds to, like, the weirdness of this whole timeline, this history.
Yeah.
So in the 1930s, the Myers family is still there. This is now the next generation of the Myers family. And they stayed on the property all the way until 1987. They had no strange occurrences that they saw, at least that they reported.
Right.
Although some of their neighbors had weird sightings.
Yeah.
So they just abandoned the property in 87. Throughout this time, like in the 1950s, hundreds of UFO reports start to like fly in the area.
Fly in.
Hey-o, silently hover in. There's like strange fireballs. There's aircraft ranging in size from like 20 to 30 feet to the size of a football field in all different shapes. Again, like just to further emphasize how much this area is like not just like a one-trick pony.
Right.
This is not just like, oh, everybody's seeing these one type of UFOs or this one type of cryptid. This is like, we've got UFOs described as round, oval, cigar-shaped, and triangular, surrounded by glowing green light. Some emitted these wavy red beams. Some shot colored lights from their underbellies. This is like everything.
Yeah.
There was even like an entire class of kids that saw a cigar-shaped UFO.
Yeah.
That were interviewed by this guy, Junior Hicks, retired science teacher, who ended up writing a book about the weirdness in the area and the UFOs, who interviewed all of the kids in the class. It was like 30 plus kids, I think, and determined that like they really weren't making it up.
Right.
Like they saw something.
30 kids saw something.
Yeah. So there's just weirdness happening. In the 60s, that's when the local ranchers start to report cattle mutilations, which continues into the 70s, which at that point, the highway patrol is getting so many UFO calls that the troopers just stopped making incident reports.
It's wild.
Like, that's how much this was happening. Is like, at some point, they were just like, okay, great.
Right.
Great. Like, we've heard it.
Keep in mind, our story of Skinwalker Ranch hasn't even started yet.
This hasn't even started. This is just building up.
This is all building up to it.
Just building up. Junior Hicks himself saw a large orange ball fly over a nearby town before it, like, made an abrupt right angle turn and then just zipped out of sight.
Yeah.
Everybody's seeing shit. Like, this was described as people, you know, as we've talked about before, like, people of all backgrounds are reporting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There's some of the tribe police are reporting things, the tribe officers. The local police are seeing things. There's, you know, doctors and teachers and kids and everybody.
Yeah.
So this is not isolated. It was something that I read, I think, said, like, they estimated that something like 50% of the, like, local residents had seen something.
Something, yeah.
Which is pretty impressive.
This was called the UFO capital of the world.
Yeah.
For a while.
This is still, like, up there with that particular title. And then basically from 87 to 94, the ranch is just empty.
Yeah, it's just been abandoned.
Yeah, after that previous family left it, it was just sitting there chilling. And then that brings us up to Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes, and now this is kind of when the episode starts. So a family called the Shermans buy the ranch.
Yes.
Husband and wife and 2 or 3 kids?
2 kids.
2 kids?
First, let's talk about Skinwalkers.
Yes. Okay, yeah.
What the fuck are Skinwalkers?
So this place is called Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
What the fuck is a skinwalker?
What's a Skinwalker?
Oh, let's tell you what a skinwalker is.
Skinwalkers are awesome and terrifying.
Yes, they're a very interesting, like, they're their own kind of, like, cryptid almost. Like, they're part of a larger tradition in the world of shapeshifters. In the book that we read for this, The Hunt for the Skinwalker by Colm Kelleher, just makes mention of, like, how almost every, like, civilization around the world has a story of a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
From, like, India to Egypt and American, like, Native Americans and stuff. But yeah, so skinwalkers can essentially are like malevolent witches in Native American culture that can take the shape of any animal that they want.
Right.
They're like directly related and in opposition to like the doctors or the medicine men of Native American culture.
Right. Which are highly revered.
Yes.
And generally do very good things.
Right. But skinwalkers learn all the same things as a medicine man would, but they just use their powers for evil.
Yeah. And even in some cases start off as just normal people.
Right. I think the one way that you become a skinwalker is to commit an act against, like, I forget the phrasing that was used, but it's essentially you commit an act that's so heinous that it like mars your soul forever, and it extracts you from like the human experience around you.
Yeah, such as killing a family member.
Denying food to a starving person. So you have to like sort of like commit this like atrocious act to become a skinwalker.
Yeah, in order to gain these powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always related to an animal. Wolf, owl, crow, coyote, but they can shapeshift into any animal they want.
Right.
They're known to knock on doors, bang on walls, peer through windows, attack livestock, and harass unsuspecting humans by appearing and disappearing. And yeah, like you said, they can be found. Legends of these can be found all over the American Southwest.
Yeah.
In all kinds of native cultures.
The Navajo, Hopi, Utes. All have skinwalker tales.
Yep.
The skinwalkers also have like really wild like physical abilities. The human witch inherits the speed, strength, and cunning of the animal whose shape it has taken.
Dang.
It can run faster than a car and jump mesa cliffs without any effort at all.
Jesus.
Which is horrifying to think about.
Yeah.
They can also use mind control to make their victims do things to hurt themselves and even end their own lives.
Dang.
So the whole mind control thing, there's a story in here eventually of a mind control, not mind control, but telepathic communication that comes up that may be related to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, skinwalkers are going to come up. So Skinwalker Ranch's particular skinwalker seems to mostly take the form of a large wolf.
Yes.
Like a huge wolf.
Giant fucking wolf.
Really scary wolf. Observers say a lot of the traits of this wolf are not normal for wolves. Walking upright. Ugh, I hate when animals are talked about walking upright.
Yes, that
the
really
worst
freaks
thing
me
ever. That like brings us back to like the Beast of Bray Road. It's the same idea,
Yes.
like creepy wolf-like Bigfoot-looking thing, but yeah, you think like, oh, it's just a big dog, it's a big wolf, and then all of a sudden it's like standing up and running, and you're like, okay, like I'm never gonna go outside again.
There's a story, I haven't encountered it in this book, but I remember hearing it from the Skinwalker Ranch area about some guy like came upon, there was like a fire, like there was like 3 dudes standing around a fire.
Oh yeah.
Smoking cigarettes.
Yep.
And this guy walks up, and when he like gets close enough to the group of 3 people that the 3 people notice, they all turn to him, but they all have dogs' heads on human bodies.
Like wearing
and
trench coats.
smoking cigarettes.
Ugh.
Really freaky.
The worst.
The worst.
That one of those images, like there are lots of stories typically in the paranormal realm that stick in my brain so vividly that like it's almost as if I saw it.
Yes.
Like I feel like when I think of that story, I feel like I'm looking at a scene of a movie. That's like
I can replay it in my head perfectly.
Yeah, it's terrible. So that's one of the interactions. They're said to like have a crooked gait. They just come right up to humans in broad daylight, which is not normal for really any wild animal.
Right.
And researchers who analyze drawings and photos of the creature say that it most closely resembles the extinct dire wolf, which existed back in like the late Pleistocene?
Pleistocene.
Yes. There you go. And early Holocene epochs, which were like several thousand years ago.
Yeah.
This is not like a recent extinction of like, oh, these went extinct 50 years ago. Weird. Like maybe there's still some around. This is like, we're talking like 9,500 to 125,000 years ago.
Jesus.
And yeah, so this is kind of what they think is part of what's going on at this particular area. And so some of the explanation of why this would be happening is in the early 19th century, the Navajo claimed the Uinta Basin and the future ranch site as their own, but the Ute attacked them, selling the Dine, as the Navajos call themselves, to the Spanish as slaves and claimed the grounds for themselves. The Dine retaliated with a curse in the form of a spirit that could shapeshift from wolf to human to anything, a skinwalker.
Right.
So from that point on, native people deemed the Uinta Basin unholy ground. Even like to this day, supposedly Native Americans will not go onto the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yep.
They say that it's the path of the Skinwalker. They don't even believe that the Skinwalkers live on the ranch, but there's a place called Dark Canyon,
Yep.
about 35 miles, which is creepy too, northwest. So that's where they say that the Skinwalkers live.
Right.
But they hang out at Skinwalker Ranch.
Right, for whatever reason.
But yeah, indigenous people who believe in the Skinwalkers like don't even like to say the name.
Right.
Because they're afraid that it'll attract Skinwalkers to them.
The Navajo name for skinwalkers.
Oh.
I sincerely apologize to all
No.
people who know the native Navajo language.
I'm scared.
So I think it's Nagloshii.
Okay.
It's Naagloshii. Nagloshii.
Okay.
Nagloshii.
Did you just summon?
I fucking probably did because I
You
just said it
probably
like
did.
3 times
What
in a
did
row.
you just say?
Damn
You'll
it.
ever say anything 3 times. Dude, Bloody Mary, Beetlejuice, 3 times is bad.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck. Am I fucked now too because I'm here?
Yep.
Shit.
We're all cursed now.
Damn
we'll
it.
see. Skinwalkers can follow you home.
Great. Yeah, we're not even going into like the full depth of skinwalkers as we could. We will probably at some point do an episode just on skinwalkers
Right.
because they are, again, this is not just reserved to this one area. This is a worldwide and countrywide thing.
Right.
But skinwalkers are scary.
They are.
And yeah, they can follow you. They are not something to mess with.
No. So this ranch is called
Yes.
Skinwalker Ranch, or alternatively, it's known as Sherman Ranch, because what happened when the Shermans were living there is kind of the most widely publicized of the occurrences at Skinwalker / Sherman Ranch.
Yep.
So in 1994,
Yep.
the family of the Shermans bought this ranch.
Yep.
They were from New Mexico, and they decided to move here because they were cattle ranchers. They were very skilled cattle ranchers, apparently.
Yes.
So they bought all this acreage because they wanted to be able to raise their prize cattle and do their thing. They were Mormons themselves, but not super devout Mormons.
Yep. They wanted to escape like the kind of the pettiness and I don't even know how to describe it, but they didn't like the small town feel of where they had been in New Mexico.
Right.
They didn't like all of like the gossip.
Right.
They didn't really take part in all of that, so they wanted someplace quiet.
Private, quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, 480 acres. You got plenty of like room to do your own thing, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, and they, like you said, they bred and raised cattle. The book talks about like their neighbors, like the standard for their neighbors who did the same thing were, aiming to lose like 5% or less of their livestock per year.
Yep.
But they wanted to stick to like 1% or less. They
Yeah.
did not like to lose their animals.
They were very...
That'll come up later.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are very like serious people that are very good at what they do.
No nonsense, just kind of like salt to the earth, like just classic cattle ranch people. They just love raising cattle. They love like the nature. They think that this ranch they moved to is one of like the most beautiful places they've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
And they're just psyched. Like they think they lucked out because they got this place at a good price.
Yeah, they were entranced.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, the property even needed a lot of work just because it had been sitting abandoned for 7 years.
Yeah.
And even despite that, they were like pumped.
Fuck yeah.
And yeah, they had tons and tons of land.
Yeah.
But then they go into the home.
Yes. Okay.
Scope it out. This is like
So-
one of the
so
creepiest parts of the story.
Set the fucking stage.
Yeah, so they go into this house and they're like, there's like heavy deadbolts.
On both sides of the door.
Yeah, on
Inside
like
and outside.
cabinets, closets, everything.
Everything is bolted shut.
Creepy as hell. The windows are bolted shut.
Yep.
Like what the hell? I just can't even.
And like at the
comprehend this.
front and back door, there's heavy metal brackets next to the door where it was clear that there was like an attack dog that was chained up next to the door.
Yep.
So there's deadbolts on the inside and outside of both doors. All the cabinets are deadbolted. There's attack dogs. They were clearly trying to keep something in and out.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they would be able to deadbolt a door from the outside of the house.
Right.
What the fuck is going on?
What the fuck? Yeah, like keeping something in and like the closets and things like that creep me out too. Like you've got like a pantry or something.
Yeah.
And you've got to have what are you doing that you need to go into that pantry and what are you hiding from?
It's something like opening it and like moving stuff around in it, or
Right.
is something coming out of it, or does something go in there and you need to be able to like lock it in there if it goes in there?
Exactly. Like that's I could see like deadbolts, period, even if they were just on the outside of everything, is like,
Right.
okay,
Right.
that's fine. Like maybe they're, and the family, the Shermans,
Yeah.
were kind of like, well, all right, like maybe they were just paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the insides of the doors that gets me. Like,
Yeah.
even if there was something, like doors kept opening and closing on their own, I think one deadbolt on the outside is plenty, right? Like you close the door, you lock it, you're fine. But like the need
Right.
to have a lock inside
Mm-hmm.
some of these like indoor rooms
Mm-hmm.
is freaky to me.
And attack dogs.
And attack dogs. So they're kind of like, all right. There was one of the weird clauses in the real estate contract was no digging on the land without prior warning to the previous owners.
Yes.
Which seems weird to me. It's not,
Right.
I could see no digging on the land, like if there was some type of, I don't even know, some type of land law surrounding that like they had to report to somebody official.
Right.
But like they couldn't dig without talking to the owners.
Right.
What
The
the
previous owners. Yeah, that seems very strange. And like putting a limit on what you can and can't do with your like ranch seems
Yeah.
strange, because I feel like at some point in ranching you're probably going to need to dig like either a trench or like lay
Yeah.
a like water pipe or I don't know, something that you're going to require. It's going to require digging.
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody told me that buying my house, I probably wouldn't care because I'd be like, when am I ever going to dig?
Right.
What am I going to do? But a ranch is a totally different thing.
It's a weird little detail.
Yeah.
Put a
so
pin in that.
they kind of, they just put all this stuff aside because they were like, whatever, we're just pumped.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be cool. So that brings us to the day they take over the ranch.
Yes.
The first day.
First day.
This doesn't waste any time.
No.
This is not like weeks. They've settled in. They're like happy. Their guards down. This is like the day.
Yeah.
They're unloading their cars. And they see a giant fucking wolf.
About a half a mile away.
Yeah.
But it was much too big to be a coyote. Much too big to be a wolf.
Like they said, like 3 times as big as any wolf they had ever seen.
Yep. It was gray. Its pelt was wet from running through the grass.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically just slowly meandering towards them from far away.
Yeah.
And they're just watching this like, what the fuck is happening?
And it's super calm.
Yep. Super calm.
Smells like wet dog.
Yeah, smelled. So like it's a very like tactile. Like they could see that like it was wet from interacting with the wet grass. It smelled like wet dog. Like this wasn't like a vision that any of them were having. This was an actual encounter with something corporeal.
And this is several of them. This is at least the 2 parents as well as their son.
Right.
I believe was there. So this wasn't one person saw this. This was 3 people at the same time.
And they were standing next to their corral. They had just unloaded several of their prized Angus calves.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the calves, when they noticed the wolf, they kind of like grouped together towards the back of the corral, like away, like kind of trying to stay as far away from the wolf as possible. But there was one curious calf that had its head through the bars looking at the wolf.
Yeah. Mistake.
Very big mistake. So it keeps walking nonchalantly towards them. They were very much kind of on edge, but also just like, oh, like maybe somebody around here. There's like, you can breed dogs with wolves. So they were thinking like, oh, maybe like one of our neighbors like breeds dogs with wolves. And so this is just like a wolf dog.
Just a wolf dog.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. Well, it was so calm. And it even before it went over to the corral, it was like letting them pet it. Like this is a very docile animal.
Right. And they did pet it too. So they physically touched something. They physically interacted with something.
Yeah. So they're convinced that this is somebody's animal. Yeah. Because how else would this wild wolf be so friendly?
With people, yeah.
It's not a thing.
So right after they pet it, it then all of a sudden, with unbelievable speed, grabbed the calf through the bars of the corral and started, poor calf, and started trying to like rip it through the bars.
Ugh, man.
So they freak out. They're kicking it, punching it. The son had a baseball bat, starts hitting it with a baseball bat over its back.
Yeah. And
it's basically barely even notices.
Yeah, no effect.
No effect. So the dad, Tom, barks, "Get my Magnum," like 357 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world.
Yeah.
Took a shot at this wolf and landed a shot like right in its chest. Didn't yelp, didn't pause, didn't bleed.
Didn't even let go of the calf.
No reaction.
Yeah, nothing at all.
So he shot it 2 more times in the upper abdomen. By the 3rd shot, the wolf slowly and reluctantly released the bleeding calf. Calf scampered back and it was bleeding heavily from the head. So then the wolf kind of just like backs up like about 10 feet, but it's still just staring at them.
And yeah, that's the creepiest thing to me, is it's
Yes.
doing all of this and it's just looking at them.
Slowly.
They described it as peaceful.
Yep.
It was not affected, but it's like, I don't even know what it's trying to convey there.
It had chilling, hypnotic blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So then the dad asks to get the 30-06, like his hunting rifle.
Yeah.
And took a shot.
40 yards away. 40 feet away.
40 feet away.
Which, this is a gun that he had used to kill elk.
Yes.
At over 200 yards.
It has a lot of stopping power.
Yes.
So this wolf has already been shot 3 times with the world's most powerful handgun.
Yeah, in the chest.
Yeah, in the chest. Like, it should be dead.
Should be dead.
Very dead. So it takes another shot. It clearly hit. They heard it hit in the shoulder.
Yeah.
It recoiled, but stood calmly looking at Tom. He was fucking terrified. And Tom is not the kind of guy who, like, he's a very, like, sober individual who has been ranching his whole life. So he's not the type of person to be scared easily. Right. Especially, like, an animal, because he's interacted with so many animals. So he's just like, there's something not right going on here. Mm-hmm. So he takes another shot. Bullet ripped through the animal, and a sizable chunk of flesh detached from the exit wound.
Gross.
Which is disgusting. Still, the wolf made no sound. And then, with a last unhurried look at the Sun family, the wolf turned slowly and began to trot away across the grass. Yeah. So it's just like, finally, like, all right, fuck you guys. Yeah. You're going to keep shooting at me.
It's not even, like, injured or whatever. It's just like, ugh, fine.
Right?
You guys won't leave me alone.
You're just going to keep taking these shots at me. Mm-hmm. So, Tom decides to give chase with his son, Tad.
Unfortunate.
So they're tracking him. The tracks of the animal were easily visible on the wet ground. You know, they're experienced trackers. Like, he's like, oh, this is like, they were confident they'd be able to track the animal down. Oh yeah. There's no blood. There's no blood trail.
No blood at all. And these tracks are, like, they said up to 2 inches deep in some areas.
Right.
This was like wet, soft, wet ground.
Right. Because it had just been raining. That's why, like, the pelt was wet. Mm-hmm. They follow the tracks into a copse of trees. And then they kind of lost sight of it. And so they're still tracking it. And eventually they get to the point where there's, like, a muddy bank that goes towards, like, the little river that runs through the area. Mm-hmm. And they can easily see the tracks going into the mud. And then the tracks just stop 60 feet away from the water.
Right. Way too far for the wolf to have jumped into the water.
So it's just walking, and then it's just gone.
Yep.
And there's no way it could have jumped. There's nowhere it could have gone.
Nope.
It's just vanished.
Just gone. So tracks did not diverge over to anywhere else. They were just disappeared.
So.
Yes, this is day one.
Day one. That's their, like, welcome to the ranch.
I feel like I would have peaced out at that point.
Giant, bulletproof wolf. Yeah, I would have been like, nope.
Yeah, if I had seen, I mean, that maybe by itself, but, like, after the experience with the deadbolts and, like, oh, these people had guard dogs, and then seeing that, I'd be like, bye.
So, for the record, that wolf got shot, what, 7 times?
Something like that.
8 times?
At least, like, 5 times. Yeah. At close range.
Right.
And barely phased.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, day one.
Day one.
Yeah. So a few weeks later.
Yep.
Ellen, the wife.
Yep.
Came home. She's sitting in her car, and a wolf, maybe the same wolf.
Maybe. This one was it looked different, though.
That's true. She said it looked different, but also a very large wolf. She said its back was parallel with the top of her window. Right. So, like, this wolf, its head was over the roof of her car. Had to, like, bend down.
To look in the window.
To look in the window.
And then it did that, which is horrifying to think about.
It did that. And it was accompanied by a dog-like animal. Yeah. She said she couldn't really identify what type of dog it was. Right. It was all black. It was big, but not quite as big as the wolf. And the weirdest part to me is that she described it as the head being too big for its body. Right. I'm not a fan of that at all.
I don't know what that means or why some animal would have a head that's too big for its body.
Nope.
I don't want to know.
No, unless it was just like that other skinwalker's friend.
Right.
So she goes, like, these are very, I think, a lot of these examples show, like you said, like how level-headed these people are. Right. In a way, because things that would have freaked us the fuck out and been like, this is paranormal. Right. They were just, like, annoyed. Like, she was just like, ugh, like, she basically got to a point with this second experience with these large wolf-like creatures was like, we can't be bringing all of our prize cattle here with all these wolves around. Right. So she's like, I'm going to go to the local tribal office. And again, they assumed that these wolves belonged to somebody. Right. and that the tribal office would know, and they could maybe talk to these people like, hey, can you keep your wolves? Can you keep your giant like wolves with their big heads in your property?
Away from us.
And the tribal officers were just like, what? Like, we don't know of anybody who owns wolves in the area.
In fact, wolves had not been seen in this part of Utah for 70 years.
70 years.
They were extinct.
Yeah, so they were just like, oh, maybe it was a coyote. Like, that was not a coyote.
No.
Okay, I'm not an animal expert.
But no coyote is standing at like with its head above a car.
No, even like a small, like normal sized car. Even like my little like Hyundai.
Even a smart car, like one of those tiny little fucking tiny cars.
Yeah, there's not a wolf or a coyote standing with its back level with the window. I'm sorry.
No, that's horrifying.
So and then they said over the next few weeks they would see these wolf-like animals like in the distance a few more times, but then all of a sudden it was like they were just gone.
They're just gone.
Didn't see any more.
They're gone from the story.
You think like, oh, this is great. This is great. That part's done. No.
Right?
No. Just more weird shit's gonna happen.
Yep.
So, late 94, Ellen's going for a walk along Skinwalker Ridge. I have to assume they just didn't know it was called that because I wouldn't want to walk along something called Skinwalker Ridge. But
or live on Skinwalker Ranch.
Exactly. So she's walking along. It's like seemingly like dusky time of day. And she feels this like rush of wind, like something big flew past her.
Yeah.
And she like ducked, like it felt close enough to her that she ducked instinctively to be like, oh, shit. She said it felt as though it had only missed her by a couple feet. And then she's kind of looking around like, what the hell? Didn't see anything. So a few minutes later, she is walking and then it happens again. Felt even closer. She thought she should have seen like some type of silhouette or something. Didn't see anything.
She thought maybe it was a bat, but it was too big to be a bat.
Exactly. Like, that was all that made sense because it was dark enough that, you know, typically birds don't fly around in the night. So she's like, what the hell? And so she just decides to go back to the house and not really mention it because she was just like, that was weird. Which is kind of the first in a string of weird things that happens to her that she kind of just keeps to herself because she's just like, nope. Whatever.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that where it's like that particular like two things swooping by your head and not knowing what it was. That's a very innocuous thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you couple that with everything else, it's just kind of these little bizarre experiences that when you start to add them up, you're like, there's like, what the fuck is happening here?
Yeah.
Like the wolf things are pretty dramatic.
Yes.
But that, like, of just something like flying by her head, it's just like something's there, something's interacting with her, and something's freaking her out. But it's not dramatic enough for her to even mention to Tom.
No.
She just kind of is just like, oh, like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Keeps it to herself.
When you got to think too, like they've got two kids who aren't like young, but these are like teenagers.
Yeah.
There must have been some desire, I would think, to like not freak out the kids unnecessarily.
Right.
If you don't know, like you didn't see some bizarre thing.
Right.
To be like, hey guys, what the hell? You're just like, well, whatever.
It could have been a bat that she just didn't see or something.
Right. Could have just flown off and she just missed it.
Yeah.
So then at this point she starts having experiences at home where she's kind of questioning if her like memory's going.
Right.
Just little things like she would leave a utensil on the counter and go outside and then she came back and it was gone.
And she'd find it in the freezer.
Yeah, in weird places later.
Yeah.
That happens to me now, but I'm pregnant, so it's probably not paranormal.
Oh,
I legit was eating tortilla chips the other night. Next day was like, oh man, I really want some more of those chips. Couldn't find them.
Yeah.
And I was like, did I really forget that I ate like the rest of the bag? Like, I'm pretty sure I didn't finish the bag. And then the next day, I go in the freezer for something unrelated. The chips are in the freezer.
Nice.
Yeah, I put them in. I don't know why I put them in the freezer. Wasn't getting anything out of the freezer.
Maybe there's a skinwalker in your house.
Oh, shit. Well, there is now.
Fuck. Oh, yeah, now there is because I said its name 3 times.
Damn it. Yeah, so she just, again, she very level-headed, not wanting to jump to conclusions, thinks that the kids are just fucking around with her.
Right.
She assumes that it's just the kids.
It's very possible.
But then, one night, Tom comes in.
Yep.
He's outside trying to fix a fence.
He's pissed.
He's super pissed. He's irate that somebody hid his post digger.
Post digger, yep.
Which, this is a 70-pound tool.
Yeah, if you've ever seen it, it's kind of like vaguely like a nutcracker shaped thing.
Yeah.
But it's like huge.
It's big.
And you just like chunk it into the ground and then like pull it together and it pulls up a piece of earth. So it's like a big,
intense.
heavy piece of like, not machinery, but like a big, heavy tool.
Yeah, this is not a spatula.
No.
I mean, even that popping up at the freezer is weird. But yeah, you can think like, oh, I was distracted, whatever. He's wondering who the hell hit it, which I don't know what they think of their kids, that he's just like assumes that like his son went out there and like fucked around with him.
Right.
But Ellen was like, no, like we've all been in the house for like a couple hours now. He said that he like left it on the ground, walked to his truck to get a wrench, and then came back a few minutes later and it was just gone.
Right.
The family went out and helped him look for like a half an hour, didn't find anything.
Right. They later
gone.
found it in a tree.
In a tree.
In a fucking tree. Like, way up in a tree.
This is not something, like, Tom didn't do that accidentally.
No.
He didn't, like, black out and fucking swing around that thing like you do with the, what is that?
The shot put?
Or yeah.
No,
the shot put,
hammer,
or like
the hammer throw.
Yeah, where you'd spin around in a circle and like toss something super heavy. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't do that.
Right.
And forget and be like, oh, whoops, yeah, that's right. I like shot it up into that tree.
Oops.
This is a 70-pound thing. This did not blow up into the tree.
Right.
There's no explanation for this.
This is where it's weird because like all of these things, like Ellen misplacing or like things disappearing on Ellen, this post digger. There was another time when Tom's pliers had disappeared while he was using them.
Yep.
They're all kind of like poltergeist activity. Like if this was in like a haunted house or somewhere, like you'd be like, oh, like there's a ghost that's moving shit around. Like that's classic poltergeist.
And again, very trickstery.
Right.
In the sense that it's not harmful or damaging really, it's just messing with you. Like the pliers, he literally left them turned around, and then when he went back to the fence post, they were gone. So yeah, they're just being messed with. And this is when Ellen decides that she's going to confess having similar experiences, and the book says this is when Tom knew that something was wrong. I don't know how it took him this long, honestly.
Right.
I knew something was wrong immediately.
Right.
But Tom's now like, okay, something's weird is happening here.
I like the story of Ellen. She brought home a whole bunch of groceries. And so she like takes all the groceries in, it's like 10, 15 bags of groceries, lays them all on the table, and then spends a good like hour and a half putting all these groceries away.
Oh yeah.
And then she goes and she does something else, and she comes back like 20 minutes later, and all of the groceries are unput away. Like they're back in the bags that she originally brought them in, all on the table where she left them.
That is terrible.
Exactly like it was.
Again, like it's not damaging, I guess, in the sense that it's like violent, but it is in the sense that you would totally think you were going nuts.
Oh yeah.
You'd be like, how did I just imagine
that you spend an hour and a half putting away groceries?
Like, and what did I just do for an hour and a half if I didn't do that? Like, how did I black out a whole chunk of time?
And even then, like how like even if we're gonna go with a theory that like her kids are fucking with her, how are they gonna go through all of the different like cabinets that she just put all the shit away in, take it out, put it back in the bags, and put it all on the table, like in the span of 20 minutes when it took her an hour and a half to like unpack them?
Right.
Like it does not make sense. It's not physically possible, and it doesn't make sense as a prank.
No. And so maybe that's why they wanted to lock the cabinets from the inside.
Right.
Because they're like, you know what? I gotta keep my shit in there.
All right. Because people keep unpacking them.
Yeah. So shortly after these experiences, Tom's nephew Dave comes to visit. He's like city boy. Yep. Also a teenager. He's like similar to similar to like Tad's age, it seemed. And he's coming to help with the ranch. Yep. So the three of the boys go out one night. Yep. Walking around the property. I think it said that like Tom wanted to like Dave was a little bit afraid of being out, in the country in the dark. Yep. So he kind of wanted to help him out with that, which this just did the total opposite.
Oh yeah.
So they're like just walking around the property. And then Tom sees the lights of like what he thinks is an RV trespassing on the property, like about a half mile to their west. Yep. Again, despite all this weird shit, his first thought is just like fucking trespassers. Yeah. Like assholes. It apparently was not a new thing for people to like either accidentally or on purpose come onto the ranch property. I mean, again, it's a big property. Yeah. So people coming on the property to like hunt or to do whatever is like not out of the ordinary. Right. So they kind of pick up their pace because he wanted to, say something to these people. Right. And they get about 200 yards away. The RV starts to move away from them.
Which they knew that he was there.
Exactly. Which he thought was weird enough because, like, he's like, how could they have seen us? They're out in the dark. Yeah. In the middle of, like, a big pasture. So they kind of break into a jog at this point. And then Tom's kind of wondering, as they're chasing this RV, how is it moving so smoothly when the ground is not even?
Right. It's not on a road.
Right.
There's no paved roads here.
No, there's like ruts and stuff. Like he's looking down at the ground to make sure he's not tripping on anything. Like how is this vehicle not bouncing? Right. And then all of a sudden they notice that the lights from the vehicle, so there's headlights in the front and like a red light in the back, seem like they're rising a few feet off the ground. Yep. And it even like passed over a few smaller fences on the property. So he's like, so now they're running. And they're getting close to the end of the property, like this last pasture before there's a 5-foot barbed wire fence and a row of trees. Right. And he's like, again, Tom is like still not in the mindset of like, this is fucking weird.
Right.
He's just like, yes, I'm going to catch them.
Right.
And at this point, he's wondering why this whole time they haven't heard an engine on this vehicle.
Completely silent.
Completely silent. And they get to the end. The RV lifts further into the air and then silently flies over the tree line, which is a good 50 feet high.
Jesus.
And that's when he notices that it's not really RV shaped. It's shaped kind of like a large refrigerator.
Yep.
And shortly after this, Dave leaves the property and his parents tell them that he's not coming back as long as they live there.
He's the one smart person in this whole story.
Yeah, he is the one person who got the hell away. And they have no freaking idea
what just happened.
What the hell that was.
So it was like shaped like a large refrigerator, and it had one single headlight in the front and one single red light in the back.
Yeah.
And it flew away silently.
Over a 50-foot tree line.
So there is a type of UFO encounter that exists mainly in South America, it seems like. They're called chupas.
So cute.
Right?
Sounds so cute for something
I think there's actually a brand of lollipop.
Oh, yeah.
Chupa Chupas.
Chupa Chupas.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What the hell?
Right?
What does chupa mean?
I don't know. Weird.
Like, ruins that for me.
So, Dr. Jacques Vallée, who's a famous UFO researcher,
cool.
Sort of like did this whole study in Brazil and some other countries in South America where he basically was finding out about these sightings of chupas, like which they're described almost identically to what Tom and his nephew saw. They're shaped roughly like big refrigerators with a single light in the front and a red light in the back.
Crazy.
And so people would see them, and the scary thing is that these chupas kill people.
Oh, yeah.
They are said to emit this really bright light, like a powerful light beam that when it would hit people, it would like fly up and it would hit you with a light beam and you would immediately like stop moving and it would hold you in place. Like it felt like rocks were put on your chest and stopped you dead.
That's terrible.
And they make humming sound like a refrigerator or a transformer. It doesn't change when the object accelerates. It doesn't seem large enough to contain a human pilot. So it will attack you with this light that, for whatever reason, it like searches you out, hits you with the light, and 35 people in just this one town had interactions with this, and they all had medical injuries related to it that were very similar to radiation poisoning. So after you were hit with this light, it would cause intense reddening of the skin in the affected area. Later, the hair would fall out and the skin would turn black. There was no pain, only a slight warmth. And one also noticed small puncture marks in the skin. So a comprehensive list of all of the physical effects that people had felt from these chupas in Brazil and South America. Feeling of weakness, dizziness, loss of sensitivity, numbness and trembling, pallid complexion, low blood pressure, anemia, blackened skin with hair loss, puncture marks, but no nausea, no diarrhea. So nausea and diarrhea are symptoms of radiation poisoning. A lot of this is also similar to radiation poisoning. So it's almost like there's some kind of radiation being emitted by these chupas.
Yeah.
And even this one person described when they were hit with the light, when they tried to scream, no sound would come out. But their eyes remained open.
That's terrible.
Isn't that frightening?
That's terrible. So
these chupas are very similar to what Tom and his nephew saw on their property.
Yeah.
The refrigerator-shaped UFO with a light in the front and a red light in the back. So nothing like... They didn't get hit with this light, like Tom and his nephew didn't get hit with this light.
Right.
But, like, they were terrified of it, and they were pretty lucky that they didn't get fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
And it's weird that, like, this whole... Like, I doubt Tom was aware of the existence of chupas.
Right.
I hadn't heard about chupas until I read this.
No.
So, like, and we're fairly well acquainted with paranormal things.
Yeah.
So I find it hard to believe that this, like, rancher in Texas knew about... Or in Utah...
Wow.
How
dare you.
knew about chupas in like Brazil and South America.
Right.
It seems very strange. So he's describing something that's almost identical to these other things far away, like independently.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a weird So this is only one type of UFO that's seen here,
Exactly.
too. Like,
one of many types.
yeah.
Yeah. And a few weeks after that, Tom and Ellen saw another
Yes.
presumed chupa.
Yep.
Yeah, they're out walking around, which like I just don't even. The number of times these people go for walks at night on this property is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But they're walking around. They hear this like loud metallic sound that sounds like metal clanging against metal.
Mm-hmm.
Sound like it was coming from above them.
Yep.
In the darkness, which is ugh.
Yep.
Again, I just feel like at that point I would just run.
Yep.
I'm not like sticking around to be like,
What's going on?
But then they see a bright light in front of them, 100 yards away. And again, they don't know how Tom assumed this in the context with having already seen this, but he assumed that it was like some lost miners.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
they go to check it out. Because, yeah, of course.
Yeah, why not?
Of course you would do that. And like they kind of repetitively get closer to this vehicle or whatever it is. And as they get closer, it will kind of lift off the ground and move about 50 yards away and then settle back down.
Right.
Again, totally silent. It just keeps, like, every time they get close, it's like it wants to keep them, it's seeing them, it's aware of them,
Yeah.
wants to keep them kind of at arm's length, but it's not going to completely take off and leave.
Right.
It's just like, nope. So they, for whatever reason, just keep going after it. And then finally they hear that metallic sound again, they turn around, and when they turn back, the vehicle is seemingly gone. The light's
Vanished.
gone. They can't tell if it's actually gone or if it's just turned the lights off, so they kind of go up to where it should be, but there's nothing, and they don't see any tracks on the ground. So, what the hell?
What did they see?
What the hell did they see? So then at this point, we're like deep into winter. It's super fucking cold.
Mm-hmm.
The book describes Tom as just like skulking around the property at night, trying to like get good glimpses of this weird stuff. So like, dude might not want to have admitted it, but he's like starting to crack.
Yes.
And this is, again, they moved in the fall.
Yep.
So this is not,
A couple months later.
yeah, this is pretty shortly after. So he's just doing that every night. One night he saw this weird craft just hovering like 15 or 20 feet above the snow.
Yep.
Just chilling. Short matte black wings, an odd angled design, and it seems like it's methodically searching for something.
Yes.
He said it looked like it was quartering the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It had these like colored lights that came from underneath it, like it was searching.
Called it disco lights.
Yeah, disco lights.
Yep.
And then he said, like, literally he described it as like stretching, and you know, like you stretch and like your bones kind of make those cracking noises.
Mm-hmm.
The like craft seemed to hear that.
Yeah.
Like as if it suddenly knew he was there.
And the lights just instantly shut off
Yeah.
when he cracked his bones or whatever.
And then it flew away silently.
Which is frightening.
So frightening.
The craft that he saw was like it was almost like a triangle, but like with a blunt cut off in the front. So it was like a
Snub nose.
snub nose triangle.
Yeah.
Completely different from the chupas.
Mhm.
This is like a totally different thing. It's about 40 feet long. It looked like an F-117 or a B-2 bomber. Yeah, and he wouldn't have noticed it unless it was wintertime and there had been like, it was silhouetted against the snow.
Exactly. Yeah, it would have been completely invisible in the darkness.
Right. So it's just
Just
like,
freaky to think about too.
yeah, right. And
How
like
often that shit happens.
for some reason, like the disco lights freaks me out too. Like
Yeah.
it's searching for something, casting this light along the ground. Like
Yeah.
what is it looking for?
What the hell is it looking for?
And it clearly wasn't Tom, because when it became aware of Tom's presence, it's weird because it's simultaneously not aware of Tom's presence until he makes this very minor noise.
Like super, which is freaky enough that like, it's not like he saw a animal or like a, you know, a figure like a person or something.
Right.
Which even that, I mean, if it's at a little bit of a distance away, like that's even is impressive that it would hear that.
Mhm.
But like a craft
Right.
heard his like, yeah, that subtle sound of your bones cracking when you stand up.
Right.
And it was like, oh shit, and left.
Yeah.
Which again, it, as much as some of these things will do some violent things at some point, at this point at least, it seems like they're very kind of curious and like kind of doing their own thing, but they don't really want to be approached. Like
Right.
that, the first refrigerator thing like is trying to escape them. The second one's moving away. This one's leaving as soon as it hears him. Like it's not, they're not trying to like directly fuck with you.
Right.
So then, a few weeks after that,
Yep.
Ellen's coming home. She has the night to herself.
Mhm.
Tom's like on a business trip and the kids are with their friends or whatever.
Right.
Which, I gotta say, there's no way.
No.
I would have just gone anywhere.
Yep.
If I like knew I was gonna be home for the night, I'd be like, nope. I'm going to go find a friend to stay with. Like, I'm going to stay in a hotel.
Yep.
I wouldn't even care.
I'm not staying on this property by myself.
Yeah. I would have gone with Tom on his business trip. Like,
Yep.
Don't care. So she's coming home. She closes the entrance gate to the property and gets back in the car. And then she notices what seems like a dark cloud move over.
Yep.
But this is a clear evening, so there's no clouds in the sky.
Right.
And she looks up and sees a large black triangular object moving.
Just like Tom saw.
Exactly. Pacing her car as she drives along the dirt road. No noise. 20 to 30 feet up. Saw these little multicolored lights, these disco lights,
Yep.
on the ground on either side of the car. She pulls into the driveway, and the craft just keeps going west over the house, and she loses sight.
Yep.
So she calls Tom at his hotel, and he kind of calms her down. And then she, like, goes inside, has some dinner.
Yep.
She's probably a little shaken, but she's like, whatever.
This is one of my favorite encounters.
This is like, yeah, this is definitely one of the creepiest ones.
Yeah.
So she's doing some dishes.
Yep.
Looks out to the west and sees what looks like a large RV parked in the pasture, which that by itself.
It's super freaky.
This is not, she said, no more than 200 yards from the window. So, like, I have to assume whether you were coming onto the property on purpose or on accident, like, you wouldn't park that close to, like, an obvious house with lights on. You would go much further away. Like, it had plenty of room to go.
Oh, yeah.
But she also didn't know how it even got onto the property because there's only one entrance.
She should have noticed.
Yeah, she would have noticed that. So she said the interior was brightly lit and she could see what looked like a desk inside.
Yep.
Fuck.
Right.
And then this black figure moves into view. It seemed like it was wearing some type of black uniform, including some headgear or like a visor.
Yep.
And sits down at the desk.
Yes.
Which, like, such a subtle thing, but so creepy.
So freaky.
Ugh. And so suddenly the figure stands up and walks to sort of like the light-filled doorway, seemingly like facing the house.
Yes.
Like this is like the entrance to the RV, we'll assume.
Mm-hmm.
And she said the size of the figure gave her chills. If it had been a typical RV-sized doorway, this figure would have been like 7 feet tall.
Ugh.
And he seems like he's staring right at her.
Yes.
She's, like, ugh. And I'm picturing my own house, like, because my window behind the sink, if I was doing dishes, like, looks into our yard.
Right. Which,
of course, is, like, nothing like, I mean, I would never live in, I know you would live on, like, a farm like this.
Yes.
The idea for me of looking out my back window and just seeing nothing,
right.
like, just darkness, is too much to handle.
Is it? Interesting.
Like, I really like that, my yard is just, like, a normal length, and then there's a street, and there's lights, and there's a house, and it's, like, a school, and it's like, yay.
Yeah.
If I just looked out there and just saw nothing.
But an RV.
Yeah.
Yep.
Freak me out. So then nothing really more comes of this besides she closes the drape, she calls Tom. She's apparently panicked enough that he's like, fuck this business trip and leaves.
Coming home.
He drives all night, gets home in the morning. They go out to investigate where it had been, and they didn't see any tracks, but they saw huge footprints, almost 18 inches long.
Yep.
With no, like, ridges or anything in the footprints. They're just smooth with a prominent rounded heel.
Right. So if somebody was 7 feet tall with 18-inch long feet with a prominent heel and like smooth boots. So like what's interesting about this
smooth boots.
What's interesting about this whole interaction is that there's somebody at a desk just sitting there observing.
Yeah, what the hell?
There's a almost like scientific aspect to it. It's almost like how we would sit and observe like monkeys or like some animal. We would just sit and watch, and we'd be at a desk, we'd be filing paperwork. Like the fact that he's sitting at a desk just makes me feel like whatever the fuck thing that she interacted with there was just at work. Like it was just 9 to 5, you know what I mean? Like just went to work that day, and like he got assigned to watch the Shermans at their house, and he's just like she's just like doing the dishes.
Damn,
like
there's
so
what
am
boring.
I doing? And then he notices that she's looking at her, and he gets up and is looking at her. She says that she felt his cold gaze, which is freaky.
Terrible.
But like, why? Like, so they're clearly being observed by something. Like the aircraft are all like seemingly looking for something. Mm-hmm. The RV. So is this RV supposed to be one of the Chupas?
Right.
So maybe this RV has the ability to like fly, and so like that's what's going around. So it's like a mobile science station thing that's floating around and doing all this like weird,
and they're just studying
observation.
Yeah,
it's weird.
It's bizarre. So this is finally the point when they decide to not let the kids out at night.
Yep.
Again.
Finally.
What the hell? And they were generally more cautious because I wouldn't be going out at night. all set with that. So various other like odd things. The Shermans, as well as some of their neighbors, had reported seeing strange animals that were not native to the area.
Yep.
Like exotic multicolored birds that don't exist in Utah. And tall, dark beasts that resembled a Bigfoot.
Yep.
So this was just, and this again was not just the Shermans. This was neighbors had seen weird things like this as well. They even at one point saw this like strange hyena-like creature attacking one of their horses, slashing at them with the claws that they had, like these giant, scary claws. It was like low to the ground, heavily muscled. Again,
Everything's always muscular.
why is everything muscular? Weighing like 200 pounds, with curly red hair and a bushy tail.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. Like
Very
they described
bizarre.
the tail as like a fox's tail.
Yeah.
What the hell?
But it's not a fox.
Not a fox. Yeah, Tom approached the animal and it ran to Skinwalker Ridge and then just vanished before his eyes.
Yeah.
And yeah, they checked the horse and found all these claw marks on him. And I guess a few months later, a neighbor reported seeing a similar creature running across their property.
That poor horse, man.
I know.
He's just
I know, all
living
these
his
animals.
life. Yeah. Fuck, there's so much animal abuse in this whole story.
Oh, yeah.
It really irritates me.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So many animals get fucked up.
It's terrible. Obviously, they saw strange lights. They saw flying objects. Apparently, one evening, they even said they saw more than a dozen in one night. Yeah, they says on many of the occasions they spied the UFOs, they also experienced the death or disappearance of some of their cows.
Yep.
7 cows.
Yeah.
On various occasions. Just
mutilated in various ways.
Yeah. 4 just disappeared without a trace.
Yep.
And then 3 were either dead or partially mutilated.
Yes.
Sucks.
It's terrible. Like he described one of them as like it looked as if some like circular like instrument had just like plunged into the back of like the butt of this thing and just like sucked all the insides out. Ugh. And there was no blood anywhere around it. But he also found this like weird little puddle of like this brown liquid. Touched the brown liquid and like felt it between his fingers, and it was this like gel like and he smelled it and there was like a chemical smell to it.
Oh man.
It almost sounds to me like it's some kind of like disinfectant or some kind of like medical like chemical that's being used. And he went to go get a container to collect a sample of it in, came back and it had already evaporated.
Damn. I don't think I would be touching that.
No.
Personally,
God,
but
no. And a lot of like the cows that were mutilated, like they didn't decompose normally. Yeah. They would take like several more days to decompose than it normally would, given like the heat and humidity.
Interesting.
So it's almost as if like something either like the energy of these cow corpses is keeping things away, or maybe this like weird chemical is just sterilizing it so that all of the normal breakdown can't happen.
Yeah, to preserve it a little more.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that was that particular cow, a 6-inch wide, 18-inch deep hole cored out of its rectum.
Yeah. Jesus.
That's like not something that an animal would do to another animal.
No.
Or even like have the capability of doing.
Right.
And yeah, surgically. No trace of blood. Like this is clearly not a, oh shit, a coyote came on, like a fox, whatever.
Right. There'd be blood everywhere. It'd be like ragged tear marks. There'd be teeth marks. There'd be claw marks. Like it wouldn't just be a clean surgical, like circle that would like just cord the poor cow out.
Right. Like one of the cows had a hole in the center of its left eyeball, while the other eye was untouched. Like again, like a very clean hole. Ugh. And one of the last cow to be killed and mutilated had been seen alive by the son Tad just like 5 minutes earlier. Yeah, he was going to collect like one of like the little calves had escaped. Yeah. So he was going to catch it, and he like chasing the calf, and he sees this poor cow that had fallen into like a little ravine, and he's like, "Oh shit! Like I'll like help that cow out after I catch this calf." Goes, catches the calf. Not more than 20 minutes had elapsed from when he saw the cow in the ravine to when he got back to it. Yeah. So within 20 minutes, the cow was dead. And he's like, what the fuck? And he goes and looks, and it's been cored. In the same way. No blood. Yeah. No nothing. So in the space of 20 minutes. Some giant apple core just came in and just destroyed the poor cow's rectum. They're always like, it's always like the genitalia or like the rectum area. That's always what they take. And that's always what they cut out. Like, what the hell, dudes? Why are they only studying that? You know what I mean? They're perverts.
Right.
That's what's going on. Yeah, one of the cattle seemed to just have been lifted from the snow.
Yeah.
Its hoof prints like led into a field and then just stopped.
Very similar to the bulletproof wolf.
Yeah, exactly. And the ground was littered with broken twigs and branches and the tops of the trees appeared to have been cut off.
Yes. As if something came down low and beamed him up.
Grabbed it, took it away. Yeah. They said like the pastures would sometimes just light up at night.
Mm-hmm.
And like the sounds of, this also freaks me out. Sounds of heavy machinery could be heard that seemed to be operating under the earth.
Yes.
I don't like that at all.
No.
Like no part of that
I don't like that at all.
do I like. Again, I would never have gotten this far.
No.
But if I did get this far, that would be a tip-off point for me of just like, nope. Yeah, again, the items disappearing, reappearing later. They heard strange disembodied voices, often speaking in unfamiliar language, coming from above them.
Yes.
What the fuck?
In like the air above them.
I'm like so upset
Yes.
by all of this. Crop circles. They saw doorways appear in midair with light emerging from them.
Okay, let's talk about those doorways. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
Talk about the doorways.
So he described them as windows. So Tom very often would see what looked like an orange circle in the western sky.
Yep.
It was bigger than a harvest moon. It was like bigger than anything else. It would always be after the sunset. So it would hover low over the cottonwood trees about a mile away from him. So this orange circle, it looked either flattened or elongated. It looked like an orange setting sun, kind of. So one time, the sun had set, so it was dark, but he could see this orange window hovering about a mile away above the trees.
Yeah.
So he's looking, and he grabs his gun and is looking through the scope, so he can look closer
I
up.
was just gonna try to
Shoot at it.
Screw it.
So he's using the scope to look through it. So keep in mind it's nighttime. So he's looking at this window, and he sees another sky within the window.
Jesus Christ.
So it's nighttime, but within the window he sees a day sky.
Jesus.
So he sees blue sky.
Just reminds me of the day man and the night man.
Day sky.
Yeah. Day sky, night sky.
So Tom felt like it was a tear or a hole in the sky a mile away, because it looked like there was depth to it, and as he moved, it would kind of it would shift perspective as if he was looking through a hole into another dimension or something.
But for some reason, this is one of the few things that strikes me as kind of nice.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be if I saw it.
No.
But it's one of the few parts of the story that I'm like, oh.
That'd be beautiful.
Okay.
Well, you think so.
Yeah,
but,
you think so.
So another time he was looking, and it looked like a 3-dimensional sort of tube leading away from him. And he noticed a fast-moving black object that was silhouetted perfectly against the bright orange background. The object was growing bigger and bigger, and he could tell it was moving rapidly away from, towards him.
Yeah.
Through the tunnel that he was seeing.
Shit.
Within seconds, the vaguely triangular object had gained considerably in size and flew out of the hole in the sky.
Jesus.
And then flew off and disappeared.
Dang.
So these black triangles that him and Ellen have seen came out of this window in the sky.
Of course.
So, and there was another point where he noticed the window, and he's like, I'm going to go drive and try to see if I can get to it, because it only looks like it's about a mile away.
Damn, dude.
So as he's driving down the road, he's noticing that at first he was looking at it and it looks like a perfect circle. And as he's driving, it turns into more of an ellipse. And then he gets to a point where it just disappears altogether.
Dang.
So then he reverses, and he's going the opposite direction, and it appears again, and it's an ellipse, and then it starts to become more circular. So what he's seeing is a perfectly flat dimensional portal.
Dang.
A perfectly flat something that these black triangles can fly out of, that he sees several times. Him and Ellen both see black triangles fly out of this thing.
Jesus.
And this, whatever this portal is perfectly flat, but an infinite dimension or universe.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that would look like.
God damn.
So whatever this window is seems to be the origin of all of this weird shit that's going on.
Right. So the question is just how did this get opened?
Right.
Why is it opened in this area? Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a wild one.
Yeah, that freaks me out. Again, seemed nice at first, and then you're like, wait a second.
Let me
Nope.
tell you.
JK. So that brings us to the colored orbs.
Yes.
Again, the orbs that we're talking about are not what you might think of when you think of orbs, where it's like, I took a picture in a cemetery and there's like some white balls on the photo. These are orbs that they're seeing in IRL, real life.
Full 3-dimensional orbs of light.
Yeah, balls. Specifically, yellow, red, and blue orbs.
Yep.
The strangest were the blue ones. Tom said they gave off a crackling sound. So probably the worst story, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ellen and Tom are chilling outside at night. They see one of these blue orbs approach a horse, quote, spooking it mightily. Which, the orb then came near the couple, and it seemed to inspect them. Again, fitting the theme of, like, I'm going to get close to you, see what you're up to, but, like, then I'm going to leave. Later, they said that it looked as if there were 2 blue fluids inside this. They said it was, like, baseball-sized sphere. It came and went throughout the evening. At one point, they said they could, like, see it hover in the face of a cow, which I thought was, like, a kind of a good mental image, too. You, like, see the cow from the distance. You can, like, see the, like, I almost am imagining, like, the cow's face lit up by the brightness of this orb.
Right.
So as it started to leave, like, again, I don't understand this couple.
No.
I hope they don't hear this. I assume they're still alive.
Maybe.
It wasn't very long ago.
Right.
They coaxed their dogs to go chase it.
Yes.
Why the fuck, man?
I don't know.
There are 3 dogs. So these dogs chase and bark at the orb. They follow it into, like, this thick brush. And then they hear these dogs make terrible yelps. Like pained yelps.
The unmistakable, fear-filled yelps of dogs in mortal agony.
Ugh,
as
terrible.
the book describes.
Terrible. Tom calls them. They didn't respond. And again, for whatever reason, self-preservation, decides not to go and look for them right then. I'll wait until the morning. Despite the fact that, like, it physically pains me to think of my dog Mukau yelping in any situation.
Oh God, yeah.
If she yelps, if I step on her paw and she yelps, I feel like
you think about it for the next 4 days.
Yeah, it's the worst thing ever. I'm like, I'm the worst person. Let alone if she was, like, out in the night and I heard her yelp from a distance.
All 3 of his dogs. So this is 3 dogs that he sent after these orbs.
Yeah.
So the dogs are, like, chasing after the orb. They're, like, jumping in the air, like, snapping at it, and the orb is just very calmly, he said, seemed like it was calm, just avoiding their bites. Like, it's just, like, kind of lifting up whenever it needs to, and it's just kind of going. It's like it was luring the dogs towards the trees, or, like, behind the trees.
Damn it.
Then he hears the yelping. Next day,
goes in the morning.
He goes.
And instead of dogs, he finds 3 round, greasy lumps with what appeared to be a scorched spot. And he never saw the dogs again.
So the dogs got not even vaporized. They got melted.
Melted? I don't even... They met their end.
Yes.
At the hands of this crazy orb.
So these orbs, they were filled with, like, a bubbling, incandescent blue fluid.
Yeah.
Whenever they would show up, if they came near the house, the lights in the house would dim. And it was almost as if it was, like, taking the energy from the house.
Interesting.
The lights would dim, the, like, appliances would shut off, and the closer it got to the house, the more dramatic the effect was. Sometimes it would just completely take all the power away from the house at all.
Damn.
Until it left, and then the power would kick right back on.
Wow.
It's very strange. They saw these orbs, like, a lot.
A lot, yeah. This was a common occurrence.
There was even one time, so Ellen and Tom saw this orb together, which is when they first got, like, the first close-up of it. Where they saw that it was almost like a glass orb filled with this weird bubbling incandescent liquid. So Ellen just instinctively shined a flashlight on it, and the orb just instantaneously darted away into the branches of a nearby tree and was gone.
Whoa.
Just left. Because she shined the light on it.
Didn't like that.
So I wonder, what is it about a flashlight bulb that would scare whatever the fuck that is?
Yeah, what? I don't even know how to classify that particular thing.
The orbs always just kind of, like, bother the animals. They're always just kind of, like, floating around. They seem to me almost like they're, like, drones. Like, they're under intelligent control. They had mentioned several times that these orbs seemed like they knew what was going on. They were reacting intelligently to what was going on. So it's almost like they were drones being sent by whatever is sending these black aircraft. And kind of, like, doing, like, reconnaissance or just generally doing the bidding of something else.
Interesting.
So I don't think that the drones themselves are, like, cryptids or anything.
Right.
They just seem like a weird piece of esoteric technology that we don't understand that is being controlled by this intelligence.
Right. They don't seem to be alive. Especially
Right.
describing them as looking like they looked like glass or whatever. Like they are not
organic in any way.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah. So, yeah, we talked about the weird inscription. So, yeah. Do you have any other bizarre encounters that you...
Oh, I do.
That you really like?
So, speaking of skinwalkers.
Yes.
So, some of this occurred on Skinwalker Ranch. So, for example, this one tribal police officer, he was chased by a skinwalker. He thought it had grabbed onto his car door because it was keeping pace with him, but in reality, it was running next to his car.
That's
happened to him on 2 different occasions.
That's terrible.
Another time, these experiences all happen in and around the area of Skinwalker Ranch. So some of it's not directly on Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
So another one, so on a Navajo reservation in Arizona, this woman was a newspaper delivery woman, and she's making her rounds. She had her baby in her car with her. She heard a scratching on the passenger door of her vehicle, where her baby was. She heard the scratching on the side of the door. All of a sudden, the door flung open, and she saw a horrifying form of a creature that she described as half man, half beast with glowing red eyes and a gnarly arm that was reaching for her child.
No.
She fought it off, pulled the door closed, pounded the gas, and sped off. The creature ran alongside the car and continued to try to open the door, stayed with her until she screeched into an all-night convenience store, ran inside. When everybody came in, it was vanished.
Damn. Dude,
freaky.
Skinwalkers are not to be messed with.
No. So this is maybe the creepiest skinwalker encounter that is in this book. This freaked me the hell out. So this happened on Route 163 in the year 1983. This was on another Navajo reservation. They were driving. This family was driving. 4 members of a family. They felt that someone was following them. As the truck slowed to round a sharp bend, the atmosphere changed. Time itself seemed to slow down. Something leapt out of a roadside ditch at the vehicle.
Shit.
It was a black and hairy and was eye level with the cab of the truck. Whatever this thing was, it wore a man's clothes. It had a white and blue checked shirt on, long pants, and its arms were raised over its head, almost touching the top of the truck cab.
Jesus.
It looked like a hairy man or a hairy animal in a man's clothing, but it didn't look like an ape or anything like that. Its eyes were yellow and its mouth was open.
God.
Okay? So they see this thing jump out of them, like time slows down and they see this thing jump out at them.
Yeah, out of a ravine.
So the dad was fucking terrified. And he was like a Vietnam vet, so he's, again, not easily shaken.
Yeah.
So drives off, and they're like, wow, that seemed fucking strange. But they drive off, nothing else happens. They go
let's
home.
Just get out of here.
Yeah. They go home to Flagstaff, Arizona. A few days after they got home, they awoke to the sounds of loud drumming outside of their house. They peered out the windows and they saw 3 dark forms, 3 men, in quotation marks. The shadowy beings tried to climb the fence to enter the yard, but seemed inexplicably able to cross onto the property. Frustrated by the failed entry, the men began to chant in the darkness, and the terrified family huddled inside the house.
Dang.
So whatever the skinwalker was that they saw on this Navajo reservation followed them home.
That's awful.
And this is a white family, and they were saying that it's interesting because normally skinwalkers only bother Native Americans because Native Americans are aware of them. So there's a part of the skinwalker lore is that if you see a skinwalker in its transformed form, it has to kill you because you know who it is.
Oh, dang. That's not good.
Yeah, so that's just fucking... I cannot imagine.
No.
Waking up to the sound of drumming.
Nope.
And then looking out your window and seeing 3, like, half men, half... like whatever.
Yeah.
They weren't described as having drums.
Right.
So the sound of drumming is almost just like just emanating from the universe around them.
That's awful.
And they were like chanting.
And they're trying to get over your fence, but they can't.
Which is interesting. It's almost like a vampire.
Yeah.
It has to be like invited onto your property.
Which is just, it is terrible to think that they can follow you home. And then again, like these people weren't seemingly like exploring this part of the culture. They weren't even aware maybe that these creatures existed at all.
Right.
They weren't doing anything to like provoke it.
Right.
They might have just been in the wrong place at the wrong
They were
time.
just driving.
Yeah, just driving along. And then you're followed home.
Yep.
And seemingly that's where that story ends, but that it's still the worst thing ever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. So, the last little encounter that I want to talk about was... So, in June 1996, stories and rumors had begun circulating about the weird shit that was going on on Skinwalker Ranch. And so there was some local attention. So one day, a vehicle started driving down the road, and Tom and Ellen and his sons are like, oh, great, like, here's some, like, looky-loo guy who wants to come down. So there's some blonde dude behind the wheel. So guy pulls up, comes out of the vehicle, and the guy's like, hey, man, I want to, like meditate on your property. Like, I've heard about what's going on the property. I want to meditate.
Yep.
And, like, kind of see if I can tap into whatever's going on. And Tom's like, no nonsense kind of dude. He's like, no.
Yeah,
fuck
no,
you.
dude.
You're not meditating on my property.
No.
But the guy basically, like, convinces him. So they're like, what? So Tom's like, okay, cool. Fuck it. Fuck it. What else do I got going on? They get in the truck. Tom's just driving. It's Tom, his son Tad, and the guy who wants to meditate driving together. All of a sudden, after about a mile, the stranger's like, I want to meditate here, near a small pasture surrounded by trees. So the guy gets out, walks to the middle of the open ground, about 100 yards from the tree line. Tom's with him, almost with him. He's kind of farther away. And the man who's going to meditate, gets down into like a faintly religious gesture with his arms spread and his eyes closed and begins meditating. Tom's just watching, like, with his arms crossed, like, this fucking guy.
It's like, okay, dude.
So, while this guy's meditating, in the distance, Tom heard the sudden chime of a cowbell. And he was puzzled because none of his cows wear cowbells.
Interesting.
So, the sound seemed to be coming from deep within the trees. And then it started to come, and it was slowly getting closer and closer from the trees, or in the trees. Tom looked in the trees and thought he could see a faint blur, something that was moving really quickly between the trees, but he could not make out a shape. He knew it was big. And without warning, something broke from the tree line and moved swiftly towards the meditating man. Tom still couldn't see what he was looking at, even though it was broad daylight. It was blurred as if it was hidden in the middle of a heat distortion.
That is terrible.
So it's this weird, almost invisible, blurry something making for the guy who's meditating. It was covering ground at an enormous speed. Tom noticed that the chimera was making a beeline for the blissful meditator, who was completely unaware of what was happening. Tom was about to yell, but then the shimmering wraith-like thing stopped just inches away from the meditator as it let out a deep-throated animal roar that echoed through the ranch.
Dang.
The roar sounded like a bear-lion hybrid, just loud, guttural scream. The stranger leapt back about 10 feet and fell down, screaming, crying, and the creature departed for the tree line at the same speed, just gone. And so Tom could again just see like a faint blur. Flickering wavy lines like pixelated blocks.
God.
And then it was just gone.
What the hell?
So the dude was like terrified and was like, get me the fuck out of here. And
Yeah.
basically just like got in his car and just drove. And
He's
was
like,
gone.
bro, I told you.
Never saw him again.
Yeah.
So
No way I would come back.
later on, Tom and his son watched the movie Predator.
Oh, yeah.
And they saw like the weird camouflage thing that the Predator has where it's like almost invisible but not quite. And they're like, that's what we saw.
Shit.
That was it.
Great. On top of everything else, there's also the Predator.
The fucking Predator.
Dude.
So, and what's interesting about that story is that it was fully provoked by the meditating.
Yeah.
Like, it was this dude sitting down and, like, having whatever consciousness he was imparting on this area provoked that weird, shimmering thing to come at him.
To be potentially angry, potentially just wanting to scare him away.
Right.
We don't really know.
Because it didn't hurt him.
Right.
It easily could have killed him.
Could have killed him.
But it just wanted to scare him and make sure that he never came back.
Yeah. Which it definitely did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
basically, that's the end of our episode 1 on
Yeah.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah. This is basically, the end of 2 years or so of this family living here.
Yep.
Having all, like, tons and tons of, this is, again, I think it's worth, like, even just after telling that to stress, like, these aren't even all of the encounters they had.
No.
Like, talking about them having dozens of UFO encounters, dozens of, like, orb encounters, like, these are just some of the more prominent ones.
Right.
But, like, this is probably hundreds of weird things, whether it's, again, like the voices, the crop circles, the cattle mutilation, UFOs, orbs, like, this is just happening all the time. Completely inexplicable. So they kind of start to go public with some of this info, and that'll kind of lead into our second episode with what happens to the property after they're done with it.
Right.
Which, again, I'm fully impressed that they made it 2 years. It had to have at least partly been just, like, morbid curiosity on their part of just, like, let's see what else happens.
Yeah, what the fuck is going on here?
But, again, how many stories do you hear about, I mean, obviously this is nowhere close to just, like, a classic haunted house situation, but, like, how many times do you hear about those situations starting off small? You hear a little weird noise here and there, some weird things happen, and then it, like, ramps up, especially in the case of, like, where it's more than just a poltergeist and it's a demon.
Right.
Again, these are seemingly a whole mess of things that seem like they want to screw with them.
Yeah.
So I think it was brave on their part, maybe a little stupid, but also brave to stick around for so long, because it's like, how did you know this wasn't going to escalate to the point of
your death?
Yeah, like, this could have been real bad.
Yeah.
But they stayed.
They stayed. So the next episode, we're going to get into the National Institute of Diagnostic Science or something. It's NIDS.
Something like that, yeah.
They're a paranormal group. They come in and they're going to investigate the ranch. So what's interesting about Skinwalker Ranch is right now, everything we just described is all just essentially hearsay. It's just the family's own account that they told the author of this book, Colm Kelleher. They told him basically about it, like, hey, this is what happened to us.
Yeah.
So it's all unsubstantiated. It's all unscientific. It's just personal accounts. So that's sort of like chapter 1 of the Skinwalker Ranch story. The next episode is going to be once the scientists show up and start trying to document what's going on and try to have scientific experiences with what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's going to be kind of cool. Again, Colm Kelleher and another journalist, George Knapp, are going to be there with the scientists as like the two journalists allowed to be observing.
Right.
So this book is written by both of these men from the perspective of like observers, but again, of seeing these scientists come in and using scientific methods trying to see if they can measure what the hell is going on.
Right.
Because again, this is not a family just saying they had one or two weird things. This is 2 years chock full of bizarre things, and this is not isolated in this one area. It is this one area, but this is not just this family that's experienced things. We have all these other UFO encounters, all these other sightings of orbs and just weird shit. And
this
these skinwalkers.
Whole geographic area of this basin.
Yeah, is just bizarre for some reason. So that'll be episode 2 coming next week. Will be all about the investigation. Yeah, which is gonna be cool.
It is gonna be cool.
Yeah, this is cool. That's also gonna be cool. And then we'll follow up. The third episode will be kind of our theories
and what's going on with the ranch nowadays.
Yeah, what's it up to?
Right.
So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That was episode 1 of Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. Stick around for episode 2.
This has been Unknowable.
Unknowable. Love you.